Hello everyone, this is Warhawk Beyond 2040 and welcome to a very special edition of the movie review series. And today I am going to be talking about a movie that has been a long-time favourite of mine and has been a staple part of my childhood for many years to this day. And it's a movie that is very polarizing among fans. This movie has been discussed both positively and negatively, and it's a movie that more often than not comes up quite a lot in conversation. And this movie was, you could say, to a lot of fans, pretty much spelled the beginning of the end for a beloved franchise, depending on who you really ask. And the movie that I am talking about is, of course, Transformers, the movie, which came out in 1986, exactly 40 years ago, which is absolutely insane when you think about it, because even though this movie came out in 1986, I was actually born in 1986 on December 24th, Christmas Eve. But I never actually got to see this movie till years after, of course. So I never really understood or was around to bear witness to the buzz and excitement and anticipation of this animated movie. So it is what it is. That's just how it was. So the first time I became aware of Transformers the movie was back in the mid 1990s. So by this point, I was already a huge fan of the show. I used to watch it on Sky One as part of a morning block called Fun Factory. Or if it was at Sky One, I would watch the show on one of the German channels. So whenever Transformers came on, I was there and I was hooked from the word go. Now, at the time I was watching the show, a lot of the episodes that got shown were actually from the third season, or most of them anyway. The episodes that I saw from the earlier seasons, like season one and two, I either saw them on the German channels or I used to own episodes of them on VHS. So I never really got to see every single episode of Transformers. As I said, I would just watch it whenever it came on. But for most of the show's run, I mostly grew up with episodes of the third season because when Transformers would come out on VHS, most of the ones that I bought had episodes from season three. There were a couple of videos that I did have that featured various episodes from season one and two, but most of the ones from my collection of videos that I have were from season three. So I never really got to see the other seasons until years after when I bought all of the box sets on DVD. So Transformers the movie was something that I never really got to see, even though I was aware of it. It was one of those movies I wanted to see, but I just always missed it. Much like Batman Mask of the Phantasm. Anytime it came on, I wanted to see it, but I always missed it. So it was shown on Sky Movies, and to make sure that I didn't miss it, my dad recorded it for me. Now, before I actually watched the movie, I was watching quite a lot of season three, and there were a few things that were head scratching for me. First of all, where was Optimus Prime? Because I used to watch various episodes of season one and two when it got shown. Where were all the original guys from the first two seasons? So it confused me a little bit. because all of the episodes I saw from the third season that featured Rodimus Prime, Ultra Magnus, RC, Springer, Blur, Wheelie, and Galvatron, Cyclonus, and Scourge, all of those guys, they were the main Transformers that I grew up with. So it was a little bit strange, like, why haven't we seen Optimus Prime or the others? So I finally got to see the movie, and my initial thoughts going into this movie was, okay, so it's going to be like the show, but just a little bit longer. So it's going to be like an extended episode. Kind of the same mindset that I had going into Batman Mask of the Phantasm. So I watched it and I saw that opening, which showed this planet, which was Unicron, devouring another planet full of robots. And it was very dark. The music was quite sinister. And I thought, okay, this is nothing like the TV show, because it's an animated movie. When I say that the budget was bigger, it's animation. So the budget was a little bit bigger. It was a much bigger scale. The graphics were a little bit higher than normal, a lot more manga anime sort of style. And I remember seeing that opening with this giant planet with these claws. Reminded me of like Galactus from the Fantastic Four, but different. And I remember watching this thinking to myself, okay, this is not going to be anything like the TV series. This is going to be something totally different. And I remember being pumped, hearing the Transformers theme all rocked up. I just thought, oh, right, okay, this is definitely a movie. We are in for a hell of a ride. And I remember after Unicron decimated the planet and everything stopped, I thought, okay, what happens now? And then the drums start coming in, and you hear the big guitar riffs coming in, and then all of a sudden you hear those big AOR like harmonies, Transformers, do 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 do. I just thought, holy smokes, Transformers all rocked up, because the music that they used for the TV show was very orchestral, in some parts quite jazzy and brassy, but for the most part, it was very heavily orchestral, which was fine. I loved that. But for the movie, it was very heavy metal. There was some electronic elements and a bit of AOR, bit of pop. So it was very different to the movie. And the way the prologue opened kind of reminded me of how Star Wars movies would open. For example, Obi-Wan and Anakin have been locked in an ongoing battle against the Empire. And that's kind of what it reminded me of, with the whole writing going up on the screen and having Victor Caroli from the show providing the narration made it really feel tied to the TV show, with his very calm and sinister voice saying, 4 million years ago, there was Autobots and Decepticons. The Autobots, led by their heroic leader Optimus Prime, and the Decepticons, led by their maniacal leader Megatron, had been locked in battle for millions of years. Tremendous stuff. I thought, okay, so this isn't just an animated movie for the sake of it. I thought, okay, so this is actually tied to the TV show. And the animated movie, it takes place roughly around 20 years after the end of season two. There were some bits I was confused about because nothing was actually addressed about what happened at the end of season two leading up to the movie. I still want that addressed. Maybe a tie-in comic book or an animated mini-series, or something like that, because I would like to have those gaps filled, because nothing was actually mentioned. How did they end up back on Cybertron? What about Spike and Carly and all that stuff? So we never really got any of that addressed, but it did feel different. It felt bigger, and we had quite a good cast of voice actors. Obviously, we had Frank Welker, who voiced most of the Transformers. We had Peter Cullen, who was the voice of Optimus Prime and Ironhide, and we had some other voice actors as well. We had Orson Welles, who voiced Unicron, and he would sadly pass away not too long after. And we had Robert Stack, who was the voice of Ultra Magnus, Lionel Stander as Cup, um, Leonard Nimoy from Star Trek as the voice of Galvatron, which, holy cow, is just amazing. Susan Blue as RC, Neil Ross as Springer. He also provided various voices for other Transformers. Greg Berger as Grimlock, Chris Latta as Starscream. We pretty much had most of the cast from the TV show. Buster Jones as Blaster, Paul Ealing as Perceptor, Michael Bell as Prowl, even though he had no lines, which makes no sense. Corey Burton as Spike Witwicky, but a much older Spike Witwicky. And David Mendenhall as Daniel Witwicky, Arthur Burkhart as Devastator, Scatman Crothers as Jazz, Stanley Jones as Scourge, Ed Gilbert as Blitzwing, Jack Angel as Astrotrain, Roger C. Carmel as Cyclonus, Norman Aiden as Kranix. You know, we had pretty much virtually the whole cast from the TV show. I mean, I don't think there was anyone else who wasn't in the movie that didn't appear from the TV show. Pretty much had everyone. Now, as the movie went along, you know, I thought to myself after seeing Unicron, which I didn't know was Unicron because Unicron didn't actually appear in the first two seasons. He had various scenes in season three and he had a big part in some episodes. But Unicron was pretty much the big bad for Transformers the movie. So this was somebody that was a much bigger deal than the Decepticons, if that's possible. And I knew this was going to be a different movie because I remember seeing the Decepticons break into the Autobot space shuttle, and Megatron screams out, "Die, Autobots!" And they just took out Brawn, Ironhide, Ratchet, and Prowl in horrific fashion. And I remember Prowl got blasted in the shoulder, he was done. And that wasn't the worst thing. I remember seeing Prowl get blasted, and you see all fire and smoke come out of his eyes and mouth, and he turned into this dark grey, discoloured, and just collapsed in a heap. I just thought, oh my god. And that said to me that the Decepticons are not fooling around anymore. The gloves are off. No Transformer was safe. And I thought, okay, because the Decepticons in the TV series, they were a threat, but they weren't perceived as a massive threat because the Autobots would beat them, they would retreat, and then they'll come back and we get the same thing over and over. There would be some episodes where the Decepticons did win, but not often. Usually it was the old classic good versus evil, good comes out on top. And, it was much like the same as He Man, where, he would defeat Skeletor and Skeletor would say, "Until we meet again, He Man." It'd be usually like that. And that was the same with the Decepticons. They would get their butts handed to them, and Megatron would say, "Decepticons, retreat!" And that formula was pretty much a standard thing that was followed for every episode. So, Autobots would beat the Decepticons would retreat, and then they would come back and try again. And it would just be like that throughout. So the Decepticons weren't really treated as a big threat. They were a threat to a point, but not a massive threat. But in the movie, they were perceived as a very dangerous threat, and well played. That's all I've got to say. And the next scene we got, and it's one of the best scenes I've ever seen in animation. You know, seeing the Autobots and Decepticons battling it out in Autobot City, and it was just ridiculous. But it also introduced us to a lot of new characters as well. Springer, Ultra Magnus, Hot Rod, Blur, Wheelie, who I don't care for. So it introduced us to a lot of new characters. Cup as well. So this would be the new core cast of Autobots going forward into season 3. Now, with the cast of characters in season 1 and 2, it would often change around depending on what story was going to be told. But you always had Optimus Prime, you always had Ratchet, Wheeljack, and Ironhide, and the Dinobots. You always had those guys, but you'd have various other Autobots coming in depending on what episode it was and what story was being told. And seeing an entire army of Decepticons just trashing Autobot City, and I thought, okay, they really are going all out to make the Decepticons a dangerous force, and nobody was spared. We saw various Autobots getting killed off. Wheeljack, Windcharger, lots of other characters from the original first 2 seasons just get absolutely wiped out. And Devastator was put over as a dangerous threat. Wow, just incredible stuff. And then we had the big battle between Optimus Prime and Megatron. Now, if you had followed the first 2 seasons very closely, each battle between Optimus Prime and Megatron got more and more violent and more intense. So I remember seeing those episodes thinking to myself, one of these days, I don't know when, but there's going to come a day when Optimus Prime and Megatron will do battle and no one's going to survive. And you always hoped that it would be Optimus Prime who would come out on top. But that didn't happen either. And it was a great battle, great scene, and Peter Cullen as Optimus Prime delivered that iconic line, which still gets used a lot in Transformers media. One shall stand, and one shall fall. Just chills. And Megatron said back to him, "Why throw away your life so recklessly, Prime?" "That's a question you should ask yourself, Megatron." "No! I'll tear you apart with my bare hands!" Just fantastic. It's corny, it's a cartoon, but it works. And Optimus Prime just absolutely wiped the floor with Megatron. Megatron got his hits in. Optimus Prime took quite a lot of damage, but ultimately, Optimus Prime had this in the bag. And then Hot Rod got involved, and Megatron just blasted Prime continuously. Fall, fall, fall! And just kept blasting him over and over. And I remember watching that scene thinking to myself, oh boy, this is where it all ends now. And Megatron is just completely battered and destroyed. And I think there's all like liquid pouring out of his face or something. It was just, it's a very graphic image for a cartoon. And Megatron delivered another iconic line. There's quite a few of them in this movie. I would have waited an eternity for this moment. It's over, Prime. And Optimus Prime, with his last grasp of strength, just knocked Megatron out and said, "Never!" And the music, do 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 do, just chills. And the next thing they did, which shocked me even more, was they killed off Optimus Prime. He passed the Matrix on to Ultra Magnus. Optimus Prime changed color and died. And I remember watching that for the first time. Yeah, I was upset, but it shocked me more, and it kind of tied into what I wanted to know about season three. It answered that question I really wanted to know. Where was Optimus Prime? Now I know why. Because Optimus Prime got killed off in the movie. And I remember seeing that scene, thinking to myself, right, now I understand why Prime was in the third season. He got killed off. Makes sense. And I love the way they killed off Transformers, because usually you would think that you blast them, done. They change colour. I thought that was a very cool and terrifying element they added to the movie. So that really let you know that, okay, he's done. It's not a case of he's died and he'll come back online later. No, he's done. Well and truly cooked. And I remember reading stuff where kids were leaving the cinema in droves in tears because they couldn't believe Optimus Prime had died. Parents wrote letters complaining about, why did you kill off Optimus Prime? You shouldn't have done that. Bring him back. Blah 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 blah. All that stuff. And it was a shock to me, but I thought to myself, well, if you're going to do a Transformers animated movie, this is not going to be just an extended episode of the show. This is different. It's a movie, so you needed a big moment. Was I a fan of Optimus Prime getting killed off? No. Should he have been killed off? Probably not. But it wouldn't have probably worked for the story, if I'm truly honest, because when you look at season three compared to season two and one, season one and two, it would have its dark moments, but it was quite a warm, optimistic show where the good guys would win and they would ride off into the sunset. Optimus Prime would transform and roll out and all that stuff, and the Autobots would drive off into the sunset. And that's how it usually would end. But with season three, there was this cold and very depressing tone where it's the aftermath of the movie. Things are only going to get worse before they got better. And Optimus Prime's death left a huge black cloud hanging over everyone because he was always looked at as the dad. He was unstoppable. He looked out for the little guy. He protected his Autobots no matter what. So having him get killed off was a big deal, a very big deal. Yeah, he's been killed off loads of times since then in pretty much every version of Transformers you can imagine. But for me personally, as a fan, that first time in the movie is never going to be topped or be perfected. And I would still say to this day that Optimus Prime's death in Transformers the movie remains probably the most powerful moment you could ever have in the franchise because one, you don't expect it, and two, it's such a shocking moment. You think, what? Optimus Prime's dead? Well, if he's gone, who's leading the Autobots now? And I've got nothing against Ultra Magnus. I love Ultra Magnus. He's one of my favourites, but he, as great as he was, I don't know really. He just didn't have the charm of Optimus Prime. He was great. He's great as second in command, but I don't know really. Maybe it was the way he was written. I just don't think he was a great leader for the Autobots, in my opinion. And we would see Megatron get upgraded into Galvatron. I like Galvatron, but I prefer Megatron. I think Megatron is a much cooler villain. Galvatron, he's just all over the place. He's insane, and he's a good villain, but he doesn't quite have, for me anyway, he doesn't quite have the Megatron charm, if that makes sense. Even though it's the same guy, I just prefer Megatron personally. And of course, we would see some of the other Decepticons get upgraded. So we got Cyclonus, Scourge, and the Sweeps. And this all came about after Starscream had them basically booted off Astrotrain and kicked into outer space. And Unicron pretty much had his, like, I wouldn't say four horsemen, but he had his men now, basically saying, "You're Decepticons, but I own you. I made you what you are." So he kind of was like the devil himself. And Starscream became leader, which lasted for what, 30 seconds, and Galvatron killed him off. I was bummed that Starscream got killed off, probably more than Optimus Prime, because I would have liked to have seen how Starscream and Galvatron would have worked, their dynamic, even though it's Megatron, really. But I feel that with Starscream gone, I kind of missed having that sneaky Decepticon around, trying to dethrone someone to become leader. I missed that because that was a staple part of Transformers for years. I, Starscream, am now your new leader of the Decepticons. And now that he's gone, that fun element went with him, which is a shame, really, because I like Starscream. I think Starscream's hilarious. It's that old thing where Megatron falls over on a banana peel. He didn't really, but he falls over and Starscream's like, "Now I'm the leader of the Decepticons." But killing him off, I mean, the way he got taken out, I think Prime got it off lightly compared to Starscream. I mean, Starscream got blasted into ash. He would come back as a ghost later on, but the way he got taken out, that to me said that although I'm Galvatron now, I'm going to do the one thing that Megatron has failed to do: take out the nuisance. Blast Starscream into like 1,000 pieces. Says to all the Decepticons, "Will anyone else attempt to fill his shoes?" Tremendous stuff. So now we've got Ultra Magnus as the leader of the Autobots, and we've got Galvatron. Very strange dynamic. It classic in the comics. I love that, but I don't think it translated well in animation, in my opinion. We would get introduced to the Junkions, who communicate through television. Don't touch that dial. Grand Poobah, so they would talk like they were on a television show because they would talk through TV. We talk TV. Do you talk some TV? And we got the Sharkticons as well. I love the Sharkticons. I think the Sharkticons are awesome. I'm quite surprised we never had Sharkticons in the earlier seasons. Robotic sharks. I thought that would have been a nice little treat to have. Megatron sending out his army of Sharkticons underwater as like some sort of security force. Surprised we never had that. And yeah, I mean, we've got all these new characters who would pretty much become part of season three. And it's amazing because all of the original characters all got taken out within the first 20 minutes of the movie. I was quite upset when Ironhide died. Such heroic nonsense. Bang. Wow. Just incredible stuff. And Shockwave got taken out. My poor favourite Decepticon. Never stood a chance. And we got the Quintessons as well. We would see the Quintessons later on in season three, and we would learn a huge revelation about them. But the animated movie was great. It's quite fast paced. It was a very fast paced movie. There was no let up. It was like, okay, Prime's dead. We move on to the next thing. I'm not gonna lie. I would have thought for someone as iconic as Optimus Prime, who just got killed off, I would have thought they would have had a funeral for him, at least, or at least have some sort of tribute to him at the end of the movie. But they never did. If I was making the movie, I would have probably have had a funeral for him at the end, just to say farewell. But they never did that, unless there was a plan to do a funeral scene or a tribute or a memorial of sorts. We never got that. I was a bit upset about that. So, Unicron finally showed his true form. That was a big, scary moment as we see him taking out Cybertron, taking out various Decepticons. The Dinobots tried to get involved, and yeah, they failed miserably. I remember Grimlock even say, "Me, Grimlock, need new strategy." You're not going to fight a big guy like that, you know. But we had the big moment where Hot Rod and Galvatron were going at it because Galvatron got the Matrix after taking out Ultra Magnus, and he was going to use it against Unicron. And they went at it, and Hot Rod became Rodimus Prime, and he threw Galvatron into space. And Rodimus Prime used the energy of the Matrix to destroy Unicron. And they saved Spike and Daniel and Jazz and Cliffjumper and Bumblebee and all the other Autobots who were on the first two moons. And yeah, as I said, this was a really good movie. It is polarizing, yes. There were some scenes involving certain Transformers that got killed off that I was a little bit not peeved off about, but I was a little bit like, oh, there goes a good character there. But yeah, I quite enjoyed this movie. I mean, it's been a long time since I've seen Transformers the movie. I've got the 2006 edition on DVD, which was the 20th anniversary edition. It's got like the bonus episode called Scramble City, where it tells you about the origin of Metroplex. Metroplex should have been in this movie, in that battle. Ultra Magnus should have given the order, RC, Springer, transform Metroplex into battle mode now. We need all the muscle and all the help we can get. That would have been an epic moment. Seeing Metroplex taking out all the Autobots. I know they didn't introduce Metroplex till um, season 3, Five Faces of Darkness, but Metroplex should have made his debut in the movie. That would have been a big moment, seeing the city transform. We had Unicron, we had a planet. Why can't we have a city? Come on. But yeah, this was a very good movie. Overall, I would say I really enjoyed it. It's been a long time since I've seen it, and it is polarizing to a lot of fans. Fans still argue about it to this day. They shouldn't have killed Optimus Prime off. They shouldn't have killed off Starscream. You're right. They shouldn't, but it works for the story. And as I said, if you're going to do a Transformers animated movie tie-in to the TV show, it's got to be big. It's got to feel like a big deal, and you've got to make a huge impact because if you just keep everyone alive, you know, it's just going to feel like an extended episode. So while I'm not happy about certain characters getting killed off, I understand and respect it's for the story, and it works. It really does. And Transformers the movie to this day remains a favourite of mine and a staple part of my childhood. And as I said, I loved it. And I love that moments where we see Hot Rod take control of the Matrix and he transforms into Rodimus Prime, and we hear Optimus Prime's voice saying, "Arise, Rodimus Prime." And we hear the "You got the touch, you got the power" by Stan Bush. Still gives me goosebumps to this day. And Rodimus Prime would have a very interesting story arc in season three, because throughout season three, he is trying to live up to the name and legacy of Optimus Prime as he tries to fill his shoes. And he doubts himself about whether or not he's the right guy to be the leader of the Autobots. And it's an interesting story arc. I know a lot of fans didn't really care for Rodimus Prime because they blamed him for, when he was Hot Rod getting Optimus Prime killed off. That's a whole other conversation for another time. But I liked Rodimus Prime. I felt he was a much more believable leader than Ultra Magnus, because Rodimus Prime is working really hard to prove himself that no, I have what it takes to be leader of the Autobots, and I'm going to prove it because the Matrix chose me. So therefore, I'm going to do everything I can to make sure that I honor the legacy of Optimus Prime and make the leadership role my own. But it's an interesting story arc when you watch the movie and then go straight into season three. It's quite cool. It is really cool. Still think we should have had a funeral scene for everyone who died in the movie, especially for Optimus Prime. I mean, come on now. We should have had that, but it is what it is. And the ending where we see the Autobots celebrating, I thought that was a nice way to end it. Till all are one. Till all are one. I love that. I thought that was a really good way to end the movie. And we see Unicron's head floating around Cybertron. And I like how the movie ended. The battle is over, but the star spangled adventures of the Transformers will continue, and the greatest Autobot of all time, Optimus Prime, will return. I thought that was a nice, cool way to reassure fans that, okay, Prime's dead, but he'll be back. So don't worry. So I was wondering at the time how they're going to bring Optimus Prime back. I thought maybe we'd get a sequel and they'll bring Prime back, but obviously they did bring him back in the series. But I thought maybe we would have got another movie. That was what I was thinking at the time. But at least they left it open that, you know, we will bring him back at some point. So that was nice. So at least it gave the fans a little glim of hope. Like, okay, our main guy got killed off, but at least they're thinking about bringing him back. So it's not all bad. But at the time, a lot of people were not happy about Prime getting killed off, which I can understand that. But at least they had the decency to leave it wide open for him to come back. It was just a matter of when and how. But yeah, this was a good ending. So, in terms of my overall rating for Transformers the movie, I am going to give this one an honest 4 out of 5. It's a 4 out of 5. I would have given it 5 out of 5 if they didn't kill off everybody, but I'll give it 4 out of 5. Still good. It's still good. And we never got another one since, which I find quite weird. I know we got Transformers 1, but that was like years after, but it's not tied to this. But as far as we never got a sequel to this, very surprised about that. But very much enjoyed this movie a lot. 4 out of 5 for me. You know, it was big, it was epic, the music was great. Would have liked to have heard some of the old themes from the TV show, maybe just expanded upon more, extended versions perhaps. But I liked it. There was some powerful stuff. There really was. Unicron taking out the planet at the beginning, Optimus Prime getting killed off, Megatron being upgraded into Galvatron, all of those things. Starscream getting killed off as well. There was a lot of big stuff in this movie. They didn't hold anything back. If they were out to terrify kids, they fulfilled their mission. So yeah, what should we do? Let's really hit them where it hurts. Let's kill off Prime. Let's kill everyone off. But it's a fun movie. As I said, it's been a long time since I've seen it, but I remember it like it was yesterday. And it was a big deal for me because even though I never saw it at the time it came out, to see it years later, when I was getting into Transformers. So yeah, it became a big deal, and it's remained a staple part of my childhood, and it's a favourite of mine. Always has been, always will be. But wow, 40 years. I wonder what they'll do for the 40th anniversary. We'll have to see, but I hope they do something special. Not just another remastered on Blu-ray. I want to see something new, but we'll see. But I really enjoyed this movie. It's a very special one for me. And as I said, it remains a long-time favourite of mine. So anyway, that's going to be it from me. I'm going to wrap this up now. What's your thoughts on Transformers the movie? Did you enjoy it? What was your thoughts on Optimus Prime getting killed off? Were you upset about it? How did you feel about Starscream getting killed off? Do you think that was the right call to make? Do you think they should have kept him alive? Do you think they should have kept Optimus Prime alive? And what was your thoughts on the new characters? Did you like Hot Rod? Did you like Rodimus Prime, Ultra Magnus, Springer, RC? Did you like those characters? What was your first impression of Unicron? Were you impressed by him? And what was your thoughts on Megatron becoming Galvatron? Was you a bit surprised about that transformation, or were you okay with it? You know what to do, guys. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, leave your thoughts and comments down below, and I will see all of you next time for another edition of the movie review series. So until next time, take care, everybody, and stay safe. And once again, as always, much appreciated. Thanks for listening.